1 minute. We'll start
organizing this. I know it's a lot of work. I ran for mayor the first time. Went out and met thousands of people. And in that process, I got to hear I asked simple questions. What would you like to see your city be? What are your dreams, hopes, and aspirations for your city? And I got a lot of answers, but a lot of themes, too. That we want a city with good financial management. We want a city with low taxes. We want a city where we can go out for a dinner and a show. We want to have a walkable downtown. We want to have the resources to, we want a place that our children are willing to return after college and graduate school. And I believe we've done that. We have a city that has the lowest tax rate of any city our size or larger in the state of Indiana. I think we're 9th out of 120 something. We have a city with a very low, I'm talking too long, I guess. They're telling me to stop. All right, I'll get back to this.
Thank you, Mr. Brainard. Mr. Sharp.
Thank you. And I'll join the chorus, the legion of chorus of thanking the League for providing this opportunity. I'm Rick Sharp, and I'm running for mayor. I'm hoping we'll have a chance this evening to talk about a number of issues, but I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. My wife Susan and I moved to Carmel in 1992, and we love this city, and it has been a wonderful place to raise our family. Our daughters, Sarah, Brenna, and Rachel. Sarah is an attorney down in Tampa. Brenna is a student, a senior actually, Bachelor of Fine Arts at IU, and Rachel goes to George Washington University. We have been completely involved in our community in the time we spent raising our children here, from Dad's Club to Carmel Swim Club. We've been involved with PTOs. I've been president of the neighborhood associations that we lived in, the Carmel Planning Commission, the Carmel Redevelopment Commission, and I've been pleased to be on the council for 12 years, 6 years as president. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. At this time, I'd like to introduce our unopposed candidate who is here in the audience. Yes? Judge Poindexter.
Went to the bathroom again.
Judge, you're welcome to introduce yourself. Thank you for coming back.
Good evening. I'm Brian Poindexter. I am your judge. I was appointed here in 2008 by Governor Daniels, reelected in 2011. And oddly enough, this election I am unopposed, so I look forward to seeing you all at the polls in May.
Thank you, Judge. Are there any other unopposed candidates that have arrived after I asked for them to be introduced? Negative. Okay, well, we'll just get right with the questions then. I'm going to re-ask the question that's come up before about second-class city and see how the mayoral candidates, what their opinion is on whether that's something that the council should adopt. And we'll start with you, Mr. Sharp.
No, I would not support and have not supported the adoption of second-class city. It's not a question of first class is best, second class is better, third class is a little worse. It's merely a system of how we have government within the municipality. I would support and have actively advocated for an opportunity to expand the size of the council to 9 members. I think the size of our city warrants that. But I do not want to lose the transparency that is afforded by having an elected clerk treasurer. I've studied political science, and one of the dynamics of our system of government is tension. I like the independence of the treasurer. Many times this council has learned information that they only learned because of an independent treasurer. It is unlikely that an employee of the administration would go against the boss to report information. I like things the way they are, with the exception of I would move to change the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Mr. Brainard.
I disagree. I have suggested on several occasions that the state law lays out how this works, how many people will be on the council. Used to be, until about 1996, when our clerk treasurer, Mrs. Gregory, worked to change the law. The law used to be that when the city hit 30,000 people, it automatically became a second-class city. And what that means is that the city council grows by 2, 1 member representing the entire city, and 1 member representing a district. It means that that I would appoint a controller. And Mike did it. I suggested that the council had the right to approve that controller, just like the president submits a name for his cabinet to the United States Senate. Here's the issue. We need a professional in this position. So with utilities, the $130 million annual budget, we have to go out of house for a lot of things. The job of treasurer is to keep the checkbook. That's basically what it is. And this should be filled by a professional. Transparency is not an issue. Everything is available.
Thank you, Mr. Brainard. 30-second rebuttal, Mr. Sharp.
I imagine the phrase, I disagree, is something that you will hear quite a bit tonight. That's why we're having an election. The right to approve is a double-edged sword because is the council also going to be given the right to dismiss? One-time approval means little if we find that this corporate controller, under the direct supervision of the administration, doesn't meet with council's approval after we've had our first date. And as far as a professional, the mayor spends tens of thousands of dollars a year on professionals that do the very same forecasting and such that's been asked for.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. 30 seconds, Mr. Brainard.
Well, that's exactly my point. We should have somebody who can do a lot of this work in-house that currently has to be done out-of-house now. The mistakes over the years have added up tens of thousands of dollars to the taxpayers. It's time the position be professionalized. It should be an appointed position. It's a function. It's not a policy-making position. It should be an appointed position. The council should grow to 9 to make their jobs much easier. More representation will be available. We're not going to get the state to change the law just for Carmel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to we'll keep it on the money for a while here. And so I'm going to combine a couple of questions. The questioners want to know about transparency and fiscal responsibility. How do both of you define fiscal responsibility and put that in with a lens of transparency, what that would mean for the citizens? And then combining with that, what about debt? We asked earlier, will Carmel ever be debt-free? And so your constituents want to know that. So the question has multi-parts. You know, what does fiscal responsibility mean to you? Way to negotiate, but not yet. We have fiscal responsibility, transparency with that fiscal responsibility, and debt and restructuring debt possibly. So we'll go first minute to Mr. Brainard.
Well, let me start with debt. As a couple of council members pointed out, debt is a tool to be used by the city. Our debt's reasonable. Over 50% of it is paid for by business owners, not the residential taxpayer. Over 16-17% of it is paid by our utilities. Another 25% is paid out of our county option income tax. Only 3% of our total debt is paid by residential property tax owners. Because we have structured it the way we have built millions of dollars of roads, bridges, bypass, buildings, other infrastructure, while keeping our tax rates low. Our debt, if you look at all of it together, is only 15% of our revenue. If a young couple goes in to buy a house, the bank's going to let them go to 30%. It's also important to remember the federal government gives the buyer of that bond that we sell a deduction on their federal tax return, which means we can get interest rates about a third to 40% below what a corporation would pay.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Mr. Sharp.
Debt. Okay, so let's talk about utilities. Who pays the utility debt? You do. You're the ratepayers. So the ratepayer and the taxpayer are the same individuals, the same household. So that burden is on the taxpayer of Carmel. The fact that TIF is used to pay back some of the debt is a good point, except for the fact that TIF revenue is insufficient to pay back that debt. And instead of confronting the problem and looking squarely as to how we can fix this and set a plan in place, we are instead kicking the can down the road and passing that burden to our grandchildren. We disguise the issue with insubstantial sources of revenue, such as the CRC's other revenue and the Parkwood TIF bond that was attempted to be spent 2 years ago, but due to the council holding steadfast, it is there growing in a lockbox to help protect us for the future. And you talk about fiscal responsibility. I think fiscal responsibility is not running yourself right to the edge.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. 30-second rebuttal, Mr. Brainard.
No, I'm sorry, Rick, you've forgotten about the fact that our utility payers and our taxpayers are not the same. We're about 85,000 people in the city of Carmel, but have almost 130,000 people paying into our utilities. You've forgotten that the city of Westfield pays us huge sums of money every year to process their sewage. And so when we have debt associated with the utility, it's not just paid for by our 85,000 in population, it's also paid for by citizens of Westfield. It's also important to mention home place paying water, too.
Thank you, Mr. Brainard. Mr. Sharp, 30 seconds.
I won't need 30 seconds. I'll stand by my statement. I didn't forget anything. The ratepayers and the taxpayers are the same. They're paying on that debt. It's a distraction to bring the other points up.
Okay, let's talk about transparency, because that's one part of the question you didn't answer. So, well, I understand, so I'm adapting. So the transparency part here, how can citizens be more aware of what's going on in government? Like, what is your office as mayor going to do to facilitate that process? Sorry, Mr. Sharp.
We have spent in the past millions of dollars with attorneys in order to find ways to bend the rules and vary decisions of the city in multi-hundred-page documents. I think that that's unnecessary. It's a waste of taxpayer money. What I would do as mayor, I think is what you asked, what I would do as mayor is immediately do an top-to-bottom review of the process we use to respond to requests for public records. I don't believe that an attorney needs to necessarily review every request that comes in. I think we can set some sensible guidelines that our professional department heads can follow, and we can establish a much more limited basis of review. I think that the people's business needs to be done in public, and that would be the hallmark of a Sharp administration.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Mr. Brainard.
It's important to remember that every meeting, unless there's an exception under state law for litigation, dealing with a personal employee issue, a couple of minor exceptions, every public meeting is in public. State law requires that notice of that public meeting be given by our clerk treasurer. So many hours in advance, so many days in advance. Regular meetings are posted, they're advertised in the newspaper. Every contract our administration voluntarily brings to the Board of Public Works and puts on a public agenda, not required by state law, but over and above state law. Those contracts are then copied by the clerk treasurer's staff and they're put on our website. Our website has been complimented by people all over for the information it provides about the city. The city is, a lot of people around the region see Carmel as kind of a rich place. We're often the target. We had one case the other day where somebody claimed the stop sign was 10 or 12 feet off where it was supposed to be, and it was our fault because of that they had crashed while drunk into somebody else.
Thank you, Mr. Brainard.
That's why public information requests have to be reviewed by our attorneys so we don't lose an advantage in litigation.
Thank you, Mr. Brainard. Mr. Sharp, 30 seconds.
Sure. Can I just ask that we adhere to the rules?
I'll post the rules, Mr. Sharp. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really don't have anything to add to that. The fact of the matter, I'll tell you a quick story. I was at a CRC meeting where they were going to discuss transferring $1.5 million to the city of Carmel. And as I stood up and made my comment as to the hope that you aren't going to need this money back, several of the commissioners talked about a presentation they had just had from the mayor and one of his financial consultants about how this money could be done. It was done in executive session. That does not fit any of the three items: pending litigation, matters of personnel, contract negotiation that you can do in executive session. So that is one of the examples of pushing the envelope on transparency. We need to stop talking about transparency. We need to implement transparency.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Mr. Brainard, 30 seconds.
I don't know what you're talking about, Rick, but when the Redevelopment Commission negotiates a company coming here, one of the exceptions is that you can't negotiate in the newspaper. You're trying to charge somebody $20 for something, they want to pay $10, and they read in the newspaper 2014, that's not a good day for the taxpayers, which is why state law allows redevelopment commissions, economic development commissions, others negotiating on the benefit of the taxpayers to do so in closed sessions. However, before a final vote is taken, it has to be done publicly.
Thank you, Mr. Brainard. Okay,
May I request a rebuttal?
You got one.
No, I'm not allowed.
No, you already had a rebuttal on that question, so you can incorporate it into your answer to your next question if you need to.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Tell me about your philosophy about government and how what role should government play for the citizens of Carmel? And we'll start with you first, Mr. Brainard.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Government often, I think, is tempted to do many more things than it should. I have well-intentioned people call on a regular basis that want us to do this or want us to do that. I think it's very important that we sort of stick to our knitting and try to do the important things. That's provide excellent public services to the public: police, fire, snow removal, streets, a good transportation system, good economic development, redevelopment, parks, but not lots of other things beyond that. We've had people that want us to compete against private companies, do this, do that. A lot of programs that government really shouldn't get engaged in. Well, my philosophy is that stick to a relatively few number of things and do them really, really well so that Carmel can compete with other places for the best jobs and be one of the best places to live, work, and raise a family.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Mr. Sharp.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, the meeting that you don't know anything about was the meeting where the CRC granted $1.5 million to the city to prop up its finances, and it is available on video. It can be easily reviewed in the archives. As far as how much government, what should a city do, I'm very much a Jeffersonian Republican. I think the government does the least, does the best. I would restructure the way we do economic development in Carmel. I'm not so interested in giving away tip dollars so that I can participate in the design phase. I'm a real believer in the business model, in organic business development. And I would want to concentrate on using our tax dollars to funnel towards a targeted economic development program that brings high-paying jobs to Carmel, because that's what's going to help to protect our future and help protect us from the debt that we face at the current time.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. 30 seconds, Mr. Brown.
Well, I'm proud of our economic development efforts. We brought thousands of jobs to Carmel in the last few years. We've gone to other places. We attracted a headquarters from anyone ever been to San Diego, California? They decided to move. That was better for their employees to move to Carmel, Indiana. Negotiated with the Indiana Economic Development Corporation to help them do that. I think we're somewhere around 6,600 jobs in the last 2 or 3 years have, and these aren't expansions of existing companies. These are new companies that have chosen to move to Carmel. I'm very proud of our record.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Mr. Sharp. 30 seconds.
Currently, we spend a couple $100,000 a year on public relations to promote the accomplishments of our mayor, and we charge that under economic development. To me, that's not economic development. What I would do, as I said, I would bring in an economic development specialist, target an industry, develop a marketing program, and go after that industry and bring those high-paying jobs. I have nothing against call center jobs. I'm happy to get every job we can for Carmel, but I have a different idea.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Next question. This one's pretty specific. Do you know when residential roads in the Woodlands subdivision will be resurfaced? So, they want to know that. And so, Mr. Sharp, can you tell me about that?
Well, since I'm not the executive right now, I can't tell you when. I can tell you, having driven through the Woodlands, that the roads are in appalling condition. The front entryway is crumbling. It looks to me like it may be in a condition where the base may need to be replaced and repaired as well. But I do know that it is the position of this council to support the mayor in every way we can with money for resurfacing our roads. Maintaining our basic infrastructure maintains the value of our neighborhoods. Maintaining the value of our neighborhoods maintains the value of Carmel.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Mr. Brainard.
The process for deciding which roads need to be repaved, we worked very hard to keep it out of politics. We have a street commissioner. He's a take suggestions from council members and from me, but he's the final arbiter of that. We, in general, every year except the 1 year of the recession, and it's the worst, is spent, repaved about 8 to 10% of our roads in Carmel.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brainard. 30 seconds, Mr. Sharp.
Each time that the state comes back and cuts our budget, the money that is removed by the administration comes from the resurfacing budget. Last year, the council voted to take $700,000 out of our rainy day fund in order to make the budget whole, because that $700,000 was cut in order to comply with the state's budget order. We need to do more, not less. And if we need budget cuts in the future, the last place I believe we can afford it is in supporting our infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Mr. Brainard, 30 seconds.
Our roads are in pretty good shape compared. There's always a few, especially this time of year. Our roads are in great shape. All you have to do is drive south of 96th Street, and I think you'll see a great difference. Rick's right. We need to continue investment. We have $4 million in the budget this year to resurface roads, and we'll use all that money. And in fact, we got caught short on quite a bit last fall. The low-bid contractor didn't get finished before the asphalt plants closed for the year, so we have some of last year's funding to use as soon as it gets warm here in a week or two as well.
Thank you, Mr. Brainard. We had a question asked during the council forum session about how would you seek input, that was specific to neighborhoods and businesses along the proposed grade road roundabouts. So what I'd like to do is broaden that question to how, as mayor, how would you seek input from citizens in Carmel to make any type of change, whether it be roundabouts on transportation or any kind of other change. So how would you try to connect with the community in order to, hear what they have to say? And we'll start with you first, Mr. Brainard.
It's what we do in our office on a daily basis. Answer emails, talk to people, listen to phone calls, go to neighborhood meetings on a regular basis, put together a group called CNN, Carmel Neighborhood Association Network, as the presidents and usually vice presidents of all the hundreds of neighborhood associations we have in Carmel. They bring input from their neighborhoods and give to us. We go out to those neighborhoods and speak. We have a website where our emails are public. My home phone is in the book. Is there still a book? We're very accessible. And I think it's important. As a politician once said, you try to listen, you should listen a lot harder when somebody disagrees with you. We try to do that. Doesn't mean it'll always be an agreement. We need to listen very carefully.
Thank you, Mr. Brainard. Mr. Sharp.
Well, currently, as a member of the council, I hold frequent town hall meetings in Meyer, Lowe's. I'm out listening to people. But to answer your question, as mayor, one of the things, a policy I would institute that would be different is I would get with staff and I would break the city up into zones, combining, say, 5, 6, 8 neighborhoods at a time. And I would plan frequent town hall gatherings where we would put an announcement out to that zone and say on Saturday, the 21st of August, from 1 to 2, your mayor's going to be at this point in this neighborhood, and come out and make your views known. I think that it's a more proactive way. I admire the way the mayor handles his office, does a great job of responding to emails. I've seen it, I've heard it from others. But I think we can be more active and more proactive today, and that's what I would seek to do.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. 30 seconds, Mr. Brainard.
I'm not sure there's a lot to add. It's important to listen. We seem to be in agreement on that. That's a good thing.
Thank you, Mr. Brainard. Anything further, Mr. Sharp?
No, ma'am, thank you.
All right, next question then. We talked earlier about perception, perhaps, by some of the community that a lot of money has been invested downtown and not in other places. And I have a questioner who also states, and there was a quote in the paper, desperately need roundabouts at 96 and Keystone. We've had several businesses leave because of the current situation. And so this questioner wants to know about the spending of the money for the situation at Keystone and what businesses, have left or have threatened to leave, and then balance that with the perception of too much downtown and not spending other places. So we'll start with you first, Mr. Sharp.
certainly we have spent hundreds of millions of dollars in downtown, and I think we've been excessive in some ways, but I think that overall it's a good investment. It has created opportunities for us. I think these opportunities need more work. I don't think that the Arts and Design District has turned out quite the way we wanted, and I think that needs to be looked at more closely so we can ensure its success. I think that we need to continue to help work with Port Developed City Center. But as far as 96th Street and Keystone, I just don't believe that a roundabout is the answer there. Roundabouts are overwhelmed by high traffic volumes, and the traffic volumes are not only high on Keystone, they're high on 96th Street. My toolbox doesn't have just a screwdriver in it. I like to have a range of tools I can work with, and there are modern, intuitive, real-time traffic signal control systems out there that are in use in highly dense volume traffic in urban areas like Chicagoland, and they work. And I think that should be explored because it could be done at a fraction of the cost.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Mr. Brainard?
A number of years ago, when I first took this position, we had an area that was very bad in the Old Town area, but yet a huge public investment in the high school and library. It was important to invest in that area because once the area becomes blighted, it tends to spread out in concentric circles. We didn't want that. We had to do it to protect everybody's property values. We also recognized that this area is north of City Hall. We had an abandoned retail strip center and graffiti on the building. It needed to be, a city is not healthy if it needs redevelopment like that. I disagree with Rick about the success of the Arts and Design District. He said recently on one of his blogs it was a failure. Well, there's 200 businesses within the archways. 85 of them are related to the art and design business. That is not a failure. 96 in Keystone, our engineers have decided for years that that's the best solution to that corner. I think it's very similar to the rest of Keystone. Our engineers are well-trained, smart people, and they wouldn't suggest that if it weren't the best solution.
Thank you, Mr. Brainerd. 30 seconds, Mr. Sharp.
Well, first of all, I don't believe I've ever called the Arts and Design District a failure. If we're talking about my blog, that would be, time for a plug, that would be Rick Sharp for Carmel on Facebook. That's where I blog. I have written about my concerns, but I can't imagine how I ever could have used that word, nor anyone on my staff, who really, they only make comments about events. So I think that might be a bit of a mistake. As far as the intersection, I think that much the same as the original design of Keystone, I think the engineers are told what solution that they want. That won't be something that I do.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. 30 seconds, Mr. Brainerd.
96 in Keystone is, some people I say are confused. It is more than just a roundabout. It's a roundabout interchange where the traffic onto Keystone, the 100,000 cars a day we have on that road, will not have to stop at a stoplight. That saves millions of dollars of gasoline for people. Cars on 96th Street would be able to travel without stopping, only interacting with the people getting off and on that road at 96th Street. The traffic volumes are very carefully worked out and it would work fine.
Thank you, Mr. Brainerd. The last question is going to be what quality that you have, again, one quality, not the laundry list, what one quality that you have, best delineates you from your opponent. And we'll start with you first, Mr. Brainerd.
I think at this point, a lot of experience in managing this city and helping it to the best of my abilities grow and be one of the best places to live and work and raise a family anywhere in the United States. We were put on the front page of USA Today. And Rick, that's not promoting me. That is marketing the city of Carmel so the people in the coast and other places in the country know about us. And so we're on the list when they decide, the decision maker gets to decide where to put the next corporate headquarters or regional headquarters. And I think the experience getting us to where we are, I'd like to get us to the next step. And that experience and management experience differentiates me from my opponent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brainerd. Mr. Sharp.
Collaboration. I never believe that it's my way or the highway, or that I have the only good idea. I listen, I take points from other people. I invite disagreement. I'm a believer that out of disagreement we arrive at our best decisions. And that's not only my thought, it also happens to be a tenet of public administration, and there are incidents in history to prove that. I think the fact that I have been elected president of this council 6 times in 12 years, despite the disparate viewpoints my colleagues and I might have, indicates that they too believe that I will make sure their voice is heard. Even if I don't agree with them, they will have a chance to speak their mind. That will be the hallmark of a sharp administration. We will work always not for my ideas, but we will work for the best ideas for Carmel. And that's what I think is the strength that I will bring to the office of mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. 30 seconds, Mr. Brainard.
I don't have anything further. Except that that's enough. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Sharp, anything further?
The only thing further I would add is that while I don't have 20 years of experience as mayor of this city, I do have 4 years of experience on the Carmel Plan Commission. I do have 12 years, well, I'm in my 12th year on the city council, so I think I've learned a thing or two. And I also have over 34 years of experience in business, both at the corporate level and running a small family business. I never started that year out being told, Rick, you got $120 million, spend it wisely. I started the year out with zero. I had to not only earn my revenues, manage my expenses.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Before we move to closing statements from candidates, I'd like to remind you again that candidates were invited to place campaign materials outside, and so you're welcome to pick those up. I'm sure the candidates would appreciate that, less for them to take home. Also, I would like to thank my fellow league members for their work this evening. Our question collectors, Marcia Daugherty, Patrice Wagner, Krista Arlen, Linda Barr, Lorraine Jensen, who also does a lot of organizing behind the scenes and lots of signs. Our president of the league is here tonight, Mary Briggs, and our efficient timers here, Ethel Folger O'Connor and Peg Harmon. So thank you very much for your assistance. This time, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. We start with Mr. Sharp.
Thank you. Thank you again to the league. You might be astonished. Those of us who walk through campaigns know how very few people actually participate in the municipal process, and I know the mayor and I are both grateful for your presence and attention. What I hope we'll have during the course of this campaign is a thoughtful, factually based discussion on the issues that face Carmel. For me, I want to talk about the debt of this city and how we can best look at making sure that we pay it down in an efficient manner and do not leave this burden to the next generation of Carmel residents, my children. I also want to implement fiscal policies that are prudent. I don't believe we should spend every dime right up to the point that the slightest misstep throws us over the cliff, and I want to do that in a manner that anyone can easily understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're going to get to where we're going. And lastly, I want to begin to reinvest in our aging neighborhood infrastructure at a greater rate than we have been. We don't need another Johnson edition with flooding roads.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Mr. Brainard.
Thank you. I'd like to close with briefly mentioning again what I'm most proud of, and that's the city's fiscal management. A house today in Carmel that was here, we've been tracking some houses, goes back to 1998, was paying, we have one example, typical house, 38% in property tax, 38% less than it was paying in 1998. I'm proud of that sort of fiscal management. I'm proud of the mix of debt that we have, only 3% paid by our residential taxpayers. Proud of the fact that our redevelopment commission, even through the worst recession in the middle of huge building projects, came through just fine, and today receives almost $4 million more in revenue than goes out in our TIF bond obligations. City's in great financial shape, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Brainard. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been here for the duration, congratulations. You've listened to responses from 3 different groups of people: clerk, treasurer, the city council, and now mayor. You listened to responses to 20 questions. I know it might have seemed longer, but it was just really 20. I counted them. Though I am not very good at math. I'm a humanities type, so I could be off on that. We thank you so much for your attention this evening. If you're interested in this kind of thing, we do this again tomorrow night in Westfield and April 22nd in Noblesville. So feel free to come.